We've all had the good fortune of working with Brent on a variety of events over the years. In the Amateur Radio Emergency Service, the Wasatch 100, Salt Lake No-2 Olympics, races and ARES around here kind of go hand in hand. 1983 flooding, if you remember what was going on in Farmington and Centerville. How many of you remember the State Street River? Where they had sandbags piled up on both sides of the State Street, and the river was just, and City Creek was being channeled down State Street. There's another picture of a pedestrian bridge over State Street. My office is right here on Social Hall Avenue, and we had sandbags out in front of the door to keep the water out of the building. Riverdale flood in '99. Friendship cruise, here's a picture from 1995. Field day, of course, and the annual parades. The FBI ran a background check on Brent for the '02 Olympics. You want to know what they found? They found a clean Navy record. Wow. And I'm going to have Brent tell us what he did in the Navy.
Well, sometimes it's called Uncle Sam's Canoe Club. No. Anyway, I was a radioman, and that's where I learned the Morse code. And when we went to radio school back in Virginia, there were 600 of us that started the class, and about, I'd say maybe a fourth of those got wiped out from not being able to keep up. But anyway, come right down to the last, who was going to be the honor person or not for that particular class. And my score was 96.6, and the guy that beat me was 96.8. And previous to that, the highest scores in the school were like in the 80s. So I was a little bit disappointed, but anyway, I learned Morse code. I wished I'd have had a ham license when I was in the Navy, because that would have made it really fun.
How old were you in this picture? 20?
Well, that's probably 20.
20?
He's much taller now.
Okay, this is one of the first encounters I remember with Brent, when he and Daryl were operating in Mineral Bottom on the Friendship cruise, and I had stopped by to visit.
Both the hat, civil defense.
Hard to recognize NU7X, isn't it?
John reminds us that's the old club logo before there was a tower. Well, these folks were operating down there with all the comforts of home. They had sunshade, they had cold, just a never-ending supply of cold drinks. And those boaters going down the river, you know, they get up, they're hot and sunbaked and parched, and they came up there and said, "Hey, Brent, how do you keep those drinks cold?" Well, what do you think the answer was? A rare desert currant bush. How many of you, now, I mean, they had this electric cooler keeping their drinks cold. This is one clue. So how many of you think it was a currant bush? One. How many think it was a gasoline generator? There's a half a dozen. How about 50 pounds of ice? How many think it was the sun? Yeah, some of you know these guys. Well, that's what they had out in the parking area, and their lean-to was right on the other side of that car there. Notice that the red cars come out as kind of blue-black on this particular projector. And there's the one right alongside the car. So what they did is they just pointed to the sun and said, well, the sun's doing it. The boater mentioned something we won't repeat. And stopped off and huffed back to his boat. In the meantime, Brent and Daryl just popped out another cold one. Well, here they are putting the repeater together a few years later for Canyonlands Overlook over on the Colorado River. You can see they've got everything a good ham needs out in the desert. Cavities, a soldering iron, and a bird watt meter. Now, what more do you need for desert fare? This is about 1994, so we sped the clock again a little bit. And bring on the boats. There's the receive antenna. Now, well, it's the whole antenna because they have the duplexer at this little rock pile on Canyonlands Overlook. There's the picture you saw up front, a little bit bigger view. Friendship Cruise, that was around 95. Is that, well, yeah, that sounds about right, doesn't it? Since we have a date stamp on that particular slide. This is back down at Mineral Bottom on the Green River. One of the important boat pullouts and communication sites. There's another trip to Mineral Bottom for the Friendship Cruise, a little bit different setup. Now here's another story that I love to tell, and Brent knows I love to tell. Brent always wore a pager when he was state communications officer. Had that pager on him wherever he went. Well, one year he went on the rescue boat, on Harry Baker's big black wooden boat. They caught a wave. So what happened to your pager?
Well, it got caught on the edge of the boat and went into the river, and I watched it, didn't know whether to dive in or not.
And we got to kid Brent for years after that because he always had this little black curly-Q tether that connected to his pager that he installed as soon as he got back. But I don't know if he ever did go back on the boat. But his pager was secure 3 times, but his pager never got lost again, right? So lesson learned, if you're going to be boating and pager. Brent's faced his challenges over the years and made the best of them every time. This looks really suspicious, this character right here. Does anybody recognize Santa?
It's Hugo, Santa.
What's that?
His name is Hugo and it's Santa.
Is it really?
He comes to our handcart days parade every year, Mike. He
Okay,
has a reclining chair and he comes in the parade. He's there every year.
cool. Brent meets interesting people wherever he goes. I don't know if he got this guy to get his ham license though. New digs in the foothills of North Salt Lake. Brent has a really great perch for an antenna setup and a really nice tower that overlooks the Great Salt Lake and the Salt Lake Valley. Here he is surveying back at the framing stage. Brent's a regular fixture at the Bountiful Handcart Days Parade. I think this particular picture he got weaned off his tether. I tried to find a picture, Brent, of a tether for your pager, and by gosh, I just couldn't find one. So I think you were starting to trust the clip again. Well, I'm going to let Brent describe this because I don't remember what it is and what does it do on homebrew day.
No, to tell you the truth, I don't either.
It's a widget.
Well, I know what it is. It's, if you look real close, underneath that loop of wire, which happens to be the ground wire, it's a small breaker box. It has 2 breakers in it, and above it is an octagon box with 4 duplex outlets in it. And it was for a generator, so you could plug into the generator with, it had a pigtail on it with a regular range cable. You plug that into the generator, and then you could extend that cable out to wherever you were going to use it. And then the ground wire was so you could plug that into any existing outlet. You just had the ground connection on it, so you could have a ground wherever you were, and then have the 4 outlets for using your generator.
Okay, question for LaRue. How many such pieces of gear does Brent have stored at the house, in your opinion?
I wouldn't know where to start counting.
Well, I went to John's house, and I think his stuff was older than mine. Same quantity, though.
Same poundage, maybe different eras.
Hey, Mike,
Yes.
they're like Smith and Edwards. They've got it if they can find it.
I can relate to that. Brent's always smiling, if you haven't noticed. He's the all-night CW operator at Field Day. I know that the times that I was able to make it, he would outlast me because the 2 of us would end up holding down CW duty. It took me about the first 2 hours to get up above 8 words a minute. Brent was clunking along at 15, 20, 25. And after a couple, 3 hours, he'd finally let me take the key and he'd go over and log. And we'd switch back and forth. At about 3 or 4 in the morning, I'd fade and he'd keep going. So I'd rack out on that nice long seat there in the war wagon, and I'd wake up to see who was operating about 6 or 7 a.m. He was still going. Either operating or logging, just always busy at field day. It looks like he's a little tired because the sun's up now. He also is a good antenna director at field day. Notice the wrench plumb bob?
Yep.
Checking to see if the tower is straight. And he's also the loot director, in case you didn't know that. John and Brent are regular fixtures at field day, as those of you that go up to Monty know full well. Look, it's a bird, it's a plane. No, it's Brent.
What a picture.
I think that's when LaRue found out there was another piece of gear in the basement. Ever wonder how the antennas get up in the trees at field day? We got a report of a ham stuck in the tree. Now we know where Brent learned how to climb. For those of you in the back that can't read this, Bountiful President Brent Thomas was enjoying last weekend's clear weather while installing a pulley bracket on his ham radio antenna. Thomas was replacing a rotor on the antenna. Like many ham operators, he regularly talks to the other operators around the world. So now we know where he got his climbing skills. Brent has this love affair with trucks. Sometimes he carries it a little bit too far. Whoops. Several Nissan trucks and a Jeep over the years, and now Brent travels in style. The only thing the same is the license plate. That also carries over the vehicles the state uses for their comm vans. This was the state comm van circa 1991. This was a exercise we had at the North Salt Lake City offices. Really cool comm gear, right? Nice wheels. Well, Brent decided it needed to be bigger and better. And this was taken in '96. And the four-wheel drive version that we see on all of our events, the Wasatch 100, the Friendship Cruise, and Field Day. And the mini version. Oh, Brent has something to say.
The four-wheel drive one. That one on the right, Mel Overalls. I actually designed that one for the state. Drew all the plans for it and had it built. And we designed the war wagon somewhat after that, helped with that thing.
And he went back and got it and brought it home. From Florida?
It was actually built in Wisconsin. The chassis was purchased here. It was supposed to be drop shipped to Wisconsin, and it wasn't. So we had to drive it back there. That was fun. But anyway, then when they got it all done, we had to go back and drive the whole thing back to Utah.
And I'll bet the state spent thousands of dollars on getting this thing outfitted with cables and connectors and gear and storage space. But there was one thing that was left out. And I've marveled at it ever since Brent first showed it to me. You know what I'm talking about? The hole. Because no matter how many antennas you have on the roof, and this has quite a few, you always need something else, right? You always need a feed line in the truck. This thing's nicely waterproofed. So how do you think we got the feed line inside the truck? Well, Brent cut a hole, a little round hole in the side of the panel, and put a little Hubble connector lid on there that was waterproof. So you open the lid and there's a hole. You just pass the coax inside.
You see two of them there on the left.
There's one of them right there. They are right there.
There's about 6 of them all there.
Great addition. Would you buy a used ice cream truck from these guys? Brent's worn a lot of hats over the years. state radio officer or communications officer, I think they call it these days, the state races operators. We've got a really good bunch at this club. You know, 4 of the last state radio operators have been members of the Davis County Amateur Radio Club. Bill Fay, Jim Brown, Brent Thomas, and currently Bob Craven. All the senior communicator with the state of Utah, and all members of the Davis County Amateur Radio Club. So, with all of the things that Brent's contributed to us over the years, we all agree that it is time for, as Mel makes his way up, a special award.
Turn lights back on.
Again, it's a very special opportunity for me to present this to Brent. This is another certificate of merit from the RL. You know, it was interesting. I was out of the state of Utah for many years working for the Air Force, and when I returned, I started coming out to the Davis Club meeting because my dad was a member, and another guy I knew, Bill Fay, was a member. And after one meeting, Brent came up to me and said, "Have you ever thought of running for an officer position?" I said, "No." I hadn't been a ham all that long. And another guy in the club, Tim Prinster, called me up on the Saturday of December when the elections were held and said, "Mel, we want you to come out and run for a position in the club." And I thought, as inexperienced as I was, it wouldn't be anything important, so I thought, well, they'll ask me to be the secretary or something. And when I got there, I was amazed to find out that my name was on the ballot to be president of the club. And I looked, and there was nobody else running. At that time, I realized there must be something very special about this group. But it was fun, and Brent was one of my very good friends through the years in the club. And it seemed like any time I had any concerns about how to do something or what we needed to do to help make the club be more successful, Brent had some great ideas and suggestions. And over the years, I have to say that Brent's been one of my closest allies and mentors in being a good ham and knowing what to do to make our club successful. Brent, would you come up and receive this award? Thanks, Brent. We really appreciate everything you've done for the club. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank all of you, and especially the leadership of this organization. Over the past years,
You forgot to talk about the store.
I did.
Oh, okay.
I did.
Okay.
anyway, this club means a lot to me. It should mean a lot to you. I've enjoyed it. I kind of play in the background a lot, but Elle and I and some of the people, John and some others in the background, we do what we can to make the club what it is today. And try not to force anything down anybody's throat, but try to keep it on the up and up and make sure you guys have a good club and a good organization. But thank you.
Now, when I was called and asked would I be willing to do this, I probably jumped through the phone to say yes, because this was just a lot of fun to reflect on the experience. Going back through the photographs, and I brought a few here, and there's about another 120 I didn't, but going over those photographs and just thinking over the experiences that I've had with you, John, and with you, Brent, and our colleagues, it's just been a very precious set of memories to come up. So it's really great to participate in this special day.